Maya Sterling had always known that money changed the way people behaved. That was why she hid hers. After inheriting the controlling stake in a $70 billion company, Maya did not rush into the headquarters surrounded by lawyers, cameras, and security. She took a quieter path. She joined the company under a modest role, lived simply, dressed plainly, and allowed everyone to believe she was just another struggling employee hoping for a better future. It was never about pretending to be helpless. It was about discovering who could be trusted. At first, the answer seemed obvious. Her partner, Victor, appeared supportive. He told her he admired her humility and loved her heart more than status. But Maya soon noticed the small things, the late replies, the hidden phone calls, the way he stiffened whenever a woman named Serena entered the room. Serena was ambitious, polished, and dangerously confident. She worked in the company's upper division and believed she deserved a place beside powerful men. Victor made her believe that once Maya was humiliated enough to leave, they could build a glamorous life together. There was only one problem. The glamorous life they were chasing already belonged to Maya. The company they thought would reward them already had her signature on its ownership documents. The promotion party was meant to be Maya's official reveal. The board had arranged the announcement carefully. Investors were attending. Department heads were waiting. Everyone believed they were gathering to celebrate corporate success, but the true purpose of the night was to introduce the woman who had quietly become one of the wealthiest business owners in the country. Victor and Serena, however, had made other plans. They wanted Maya publicly embarrassed. They wanted her confidence broken. They wanted her reputation ruined before she could stand tall in front of the company. Their scheme was petty, cruel, and arrogant, the kind of betrayal only people without fear of consequences would attempt. Then Maya found out. She discovered the affair first, then the messages, then the plan. Each piece of evidence was worse than the last, not because it surprised her, but because it confirmed what she had feared. Victor had never loved her softness. He had mistaken it for weakness. So Maya made a decision. She would not stop the party. She would not warn them. She would let them arrive dressed for victory. That evening, Victor smiled like a man about to win. Serena walked in like a woman expecting to replace someone beneath her. They both watched Maya closely, waiting for the moment she would fall apart. But Maya did not fall. She rose. When the company chairman handed her the microphone and introduced her as the new owner, the room went silent. Then Maya revealed everything, not with rage, but with proof. Contracts ended. Access was revoked. Investigations began. Accounts were frozen. Reputations collapsed. By the end of the night, Victor and Serena had lost their jobs, their influence, their homes, and the future they had stolen from others. They thought Maya was poor. They were right about only one thing. After that night, someone was. 3 months before the ballroom went silent, Maya Sterling stood in the rain outside the south entrance of Sterling Dominion Group, holding a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a security badge in the other. The badge did not say owner. It did not say heiress. It did not say majority shareholder, controlling beneficiary, or the last living direct descendant of Elias Sterling, the man whose portrait hung in the marble lobby above the words "Vision rewards the patient." It said Maya Bell, Junior Administrative Associate. The last name was her mother's maiden name, the one she had used years ago when she wanted to disappear into a city that did not care who her father had been or what newspapers once whispered about her family. The name was ordinary enough to pass unnoticed. She had chosen it carefully because ordinary things were the safest hiding places. Black town car rolled past the curb, splashing rainwater over the polished shoes of a young analyst who swore under his breath. Maya moved aside before the water touched her skirt. Her clothes were clean but simple, the kind that made people look through her instead of at her. A grey coat, low heels, a plain clip holding her dark hair at the nape of her neck. Nothing about her suggested that the company's legal future had been placed inside her hands less than 2 weeks earlier. She looked up at the mirrored tower, its top disappearing into the low morning clouds. The building had belonged to her grandfather before it belonged to anyone else. Elias Sterling had built the company from a regional logistics firm into a global network of technology, infrastructure, finance, and luxury holdings. He had been feared by rivals, obeyed by executives, and loved by almost no one. Maya had loved him anyway, though she had spent most of her childhood trying not to. Power, he once told her when she was 11, is not the loudest person in the room. It is the person everyone turns toward when the room catches fire. She had been sitting across from him at a long dining table in his estate, her shoes not yet touching the floor, watching him slice an apple into perfectly even pieces with the same concentration he used to read financial reports. At the time, she thought power meant money, rules, and people who stood when you entered. Later, she learned it meant waiting. It meant listening. It meant letting cruel people speak until they had built their own cage. The lobby doors opened with a rush of warm air. Maya stepped inside. No one recognized her. That was the first answer to the question she had come to ask. The lobby of Sterling Dominion was designed to intimidate. White stone floors reflected gold light from hanging chandeliers. A digital wall displayed global market updates, company acquisitions, and smiling photographs from charity events. Employees crossed the floor in sharp suits, ID lanyards swinging, phones pressed to ears. Their voices blended into a polished hum of urgency. At the security desk, a guard looked at Maya's badge, then at her face, then back at the badge. "First week?" he asked. "First day," Maya said. He gave her the sympathetic smile reserved for people who had no idea what they had walked into. "Elevator Bank C Human Resources is on 27. "Thank you." She had taken only 3 steps when a woman's voice cut through the lobby behind her. "Careful, that floor is slippery. We don't need another charity hire breaking an ankle before orientation." A small group near the coffee bar laughed. Maya turned slightly, just enough to see the speaker. Serena Vale stood beneath the glow of the lobby screens, dressed in cream silk and confidence. Her hair fell in glossy waves over one shoulder. Her jewelry was understated but expensive, chosen by someone who wanted people to notice taste rather than cost. She held a phone in one hand and a leather portfolio in the other. 2 assistants hovered near her like satellites. Serena's gaze passed over Maya and dismissed her immediately. Maya did not respond. She only smiled faintly and continued toward the elevator. The first insult was rarely important. It was the ease of it that mattered. By noon, Maya had learned that Sterling Dominion was divided into 3 kinds of people: those who were afraid of losing power, those who were desperate to get close to it, and those too exhausted to care. The employees in the lower departments spoke in lowered voices, moved quickly, and apologized for things that were not their fault. The executives spoke loudly, walked slowly, and never apologized unless a lawyer was present. Her assigned desk was near the back of a shared administrative floor, beside a printer that jammed every afternoon and a window facing another tower. Her supervisor, a tired woman named Grace Kim, handed her a folder of onboarding forms and whispered, "Keep your head down, do the work. Don't volunteer for anything involving the executive floors unless you enjoy being blamed for impossible requests." "Is it that bad?" Maya asked. Grace glanced around as if the walls might report her. "It depends who asks." By the end of the week, Maya understood. Serena Vale's name appeared in conversations the way thunder appeared before a storm. People straightened when she entered. They laughed at her jokes too quickly. They praised her presentations even when the numbers were unfinished. She was the senior strategy director under the corporate expansion division, and everyone believed she was being positioned for a vice president role. Everyone also knew she was close to powerful men. Maya heard this from whispers by the break room, from a junior analyst who said it bitterly after working until midnight on a report Serena took credit for. And from Grace, who once muttered, "Some people climb ladders, some people make ladders out of other people's backs." Maya filed the sentence away. She had started keeping a small notebook in the bottom drawer of her desk, not for revenge, not at first, for memory. Her grandfather had taught her that people showed themselves in patterns, not moments. A single rude comment could be stress. A repeated cruelty was character. The notebook filled faster than she expected. On Monday, a department head took credit for an intern's campaign idea. On Wednesday, payroll delayed overtime reimbursements for contract workers, while approving luxury travel upgrades for executives. On Friday, Serena shouted at a junior designer in a glass conference room with the blinds open, not because she had to, but because everyone needed to see who had the power to make someone cry. Maya watched from her desk with a stack of files in her arms. The junior designer came out pale and shaking. Maya followed her into the restroom and found her leaning over the sink. "Are you okay?" Maya asked gently. The woman wiped her eyes too quickly. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." That was the wrong thing to say to someone used to surviving by pretending. The woman gave a small, humorless laugh. "You must be new." "I am." "Then learn fast. Being fine is part of the job." Maya handed her a tissue. The woman looked at it, then at Maya, and something in her face softened. "Thanks." "What's your name?" "Lena." "I'm Maya." "You should stay away from Serena," Lena said. "She ruins people quietly." Maya thought of her grandfather's apple slices, each one perfect and cold on the plate. "Quietly is not the same as permanently," she said. Lena stared at her as if she had said something dangerous. Maybe she had. Victor came back into Maya's life on a Thursday night that smelled of wet pavement and roasted chestnuts from a street vendor outside her apartment building. He was waiting under the awning with a bouquet of white roses, the kind he knew she loved because they reminded her of her mother's garden. He wore a navy coat, his hair damp from the rain, his expression practiced into apology. "Maya," he said. For a moment, the years between them collapsed. She saw him as he had been when they first met in graduate school, charming, bright, always slightly out of reach. He had been the man everyone wanted at their table, not because he was kind, but because he made people feel chosen when he turned his attention toward them. Maya had been quieter then, grieving the death of her mother and refusing to talk about the family she had left behind. Victor had seemed to understand silence. That was what drew her to him first. Later, she learned that some people understood silence only because they were hiding inside their own. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I wanted to see you." "You could have called." "I did, you didn't answer." "That was the answer." He lowered the roses, rain collected on the petals. "I deserve that." Maya did not invite him upstairs. Victor looked past her at the building, a modest old place with narrow windows and an elevator that worked when it felt generous. He had never liked her apartment. He once joked that its pipes made noises like old ghosts. She had replied that old ghosts usually had something worth saying. "I heard you started at Sterling Dominion," he said. Maya kept her face still. "Who told you?" "A friend." "What friend?" He smiled, and there it was, the shine, the softness, the invitation to forget every question. "Does it matter?" "It does now." His smile faded just enough to reveal irritation beneath it. "I'm trying, Maya." "Trying what?" "To fix us." There had been an us once, a version of them that cooked pasta in cheap apartments and stayed up arguing over movies. A version where Victor held her hand at her mother's funeral and told her she did not have to be strong every minute. A version where Maya believed love could be measured by who stayed during grief. But grief attracted rescuers, and not all rescuers loved the person they saved. Some loved the gratitude. Victor had left her 8 months earlier after a fight about money, not her hidden inheritance. He had not known about that. The fight began when he suggested she stop limiting herself with low-paying work and use her family name to get ahead. Maya had refused. He called her stubborn. She called him ambitious in a way that sounded too much like hunger. He accused her of wanting to stay small so she could judge people who wanted more. Then he left. Now he had returned with roses. "I miss you," he said. Maya looked at him for a long moment. "Or you miss who I was when I believed you." "That's not fair." "No," she said quietly, "it's accurate." He stepped closer. "Give me one dinner, that's all I'm asking. One dinner, and if you still want nothing to do with me, I'll leave you alone." Maya should have said no. She knew that later. She knew it in the way a person recognizes a warning bell only after the disaster it announced. But on that rainy evening, with white roses trembling in Victor's hand and memories pressing against her ribs, she thought of second chances. She thought of her mother, who used to say that people could change when love gave them a mirror. Maya did not yet know that Victor had not come back because he loved her. He had come back because Serena had told him to. Serena noticed Maya properly for the first time 2 weeks later. It happened in conference room 41A during a quarterly strategy preparation meeting where Maya had been asked to take notes because Serena's assistant had called in sick. The room smelled of expensive coffee and tension. Charts filled the screen. Department heads sat around the table, nodding at projections they had not read carefully enough. Serena stood at the front in a pale blue dress, speaking about the proposed acquisition of a smaller logistics tech firm. Her voice was smooth, controlled, and confident. The slide behind her showed growth estimates that looked impressive until one paid attention to the assumptions beneath them. Maya paid attention. She always had. Her grandfather used to give her old company reports when she was 16 and ask what was wrong with them. At first, she thought it was a game. Then she realized he was training her to hear lies in numbers. "A bad forecast is not always a mistake," he told her once. "Sometimes it is a wish wearing a suit." Serena's forecast was a wish in couture. Maya wrote the flaw in the margin of her notes without thinking. She circled a supply chain dependency, underlined an inflated revenue synergy, and wrote, "Exposure understated by at least 18% if regional tariffs shift." Across the table, Grace saw the note and stiffened. Unfortunately, Serena saw Grace's reaction. "What is it?" Serena asked. Grace closed her folder. "Nothing." Serena's eyes moved to Maya. "The note-taker has an opinion." The room went still. A few people smiled, already anticipating sport. Maya looked up. "No opinion, just a question." Serena's smile sharpened. "Then ask it." Maya could have lowered her head. That would have been safer. But safety had never been the reason she entered the building. The forecast assumes stable tariff treatment across the Eastern Corridor for the next 36 months, Maya said, but the target company's dependency on that corridor has increased since last year. If rates shift even moderately, the projected savings narrow significantly. Has the risk model been adjusted for that? The silence changed. It was no longer amused. One of the finance directors leaned forward. "Which appendix are you referencing?" "The third-party logistics summary from last quarter," Maya said. "Page 82. The dependency is not listed in the executive version." The director glanced at Serena. Serena's face did not move, but something cold passed through her eyes. That concern has already been accounted for. "Of course," Maya said. The director frowned. "Actually, I would like the risk team to verify it before the board packet goes out." That was the first crack. Tiny, almost invisible. But Serena heard it. After the meeting, Grace pulled Maya into the copy room and shut the door. "What were you thinking?" she hissed. Maya held the stack of printed notes against her chest. She asked. Serena does not ask questions because she wants answers. She asks because she wants people to remember their place. Maya looked through the narrow glass window in the door. Serena was speaking to the finance director in the hallway, her smile polished, her hands still. She looked perfectly calm. That worried Maya more than anger would have. "Maybe places need to change," Maya said. Grace stared at her. You really are new. By 5 o'clock, everyone knew the junior administrative associate had embarrassed Serena Vale in a strategy meeting. By 6 o'clock, Maya's inbox contained 3 new urgent assignments, all due by morning. By 7, Serena passed Maya's desk without stopping and said, "Some people mistake one lucky observation for intelligence." Maya did not look up from her screen, and some people mistake silence for agreement. Serena paused. The office became very quiet. Then she laughed softly. "You'll learn." That night, Maya stayed until nearly midnight finishing work that should have been assigned to 3 people. Victor texted her twice. "Still working, poor thing." Then, "Don't let them use you too much." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her uneasy. There was something possessive in the sympathy, as if he liked imagining her tired and small. She told herself she was being unfair. At 12:17 a.m., as Maya stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, she saw Serena near the revolving doors. She was not alone. Victor stood beside her. They were not touching. They were not doing anything that could be called betrayal if described plainly, but Serena was leaning close, smiling up at him with a familiarity that made the air feel thinner. Victor said something Maya could not hear. Serena laughed and placed one hand briefly on his sleeve. Briefly was enough. Victor looked up and saw Maya. For half a second, his expression went blank. Then the smile arrived. "Maya," he said, too brightly. Serena turned. Her eyes moved from Victor to Maya, and understanding flickered there like a match. "You two know each other?" Serena asked. Victor answered too quickly, "Old friends." Maya looked at him. "Is that what we are?" The smile strained. "I mean." "Interesting," Serena said. "The world is smaller than it looks." Maya felt the warning then, not suspicion, not proof, something older and quieter, the same instinct that had made her grandfather pause before signing a contract, the same instinct that made her mother once turn the car around on a bridge just before a truck accident blocked the road ahead. The world is smaller than it looks. No, Maya thought. People are. Victor walked her home that night, explaining before she asked. He said Serena was a networking contact. He said he had been consulting on a private investment deal and had reached out because she understood the industry. He said he did not mention it because he knew Maya disliked corporate politics. "You think I dislike corporate politics?" Maya asked. "You dislike people who play games. That's not the same thing." He took her hand. His thumb brushed her knuckles in the old familiar way. "I didn't want you to worry." Maya looked down at his hand over hers. Once that touch had been a promise. Now it felt like a curtain being pulled across a window. She let him hold her hand anyway. The inheritance became final on a Tuesday morning in a private law office above 5th Avenue, with the city shining coldly beyond the glass. Maya sat at a walnut conference table across from 5 attorneys, 2 trustees, the chairman of Sterling Dominion Group, and a silver-haired woman named Beatrice Vale, who had been Elias Sterling's personal counsel for 27 years. No relation to Serena, Beatrice had said when Maya first noticed the surname. Then, after a pause, fortunately. The documents were arranged in front of Maya with almost ceremonial precision. Her grandfather had died 6 months earlier, but his decisions continued moving through the world like machinery. He had left minority distributions to foundations, loyal executives, and distant relatives who would complain forever about receiving millions instead of billions. But control, true control, went to Maya. Not because she was the most experienced. Because, according to the sealed letter Beatrice handed her, she was the only one who had ever told him no. Maya read the letter alone, while the others waited. "My dear Maya, if you are reading this, then I have done the one thing wealthy men spend their lives pretending they can avoid. Do not cry too long. I was old, and old men who have made as many enemies as I did should be grateful to die in bed. I am leaving you control of sterling dominion not because blood deserves power. Blood deserves nothing by itself. I am leaving it to you because you walked away from my money when you believed it would cost you your soul. That made you either foolish or honest. I have had enough clever people around me. I would like to leave the company to an honest one. You will be surrounded by people who smile for profit. Some will flatter you, some will fear you, some will claim loyalty because they have no imagination beyond survival. Do not announce yourself too quickly. Go inside quietly. Listen. Find the rot. Then decide whether the house can be saved. At the bottom, in his rigid handwriting, he had added one final line. Remember, when someone shows you what they would do to the powerless, believe them. Maya folded the letter with steady hands. When she looked up, Chairman Alastair Rowe was watching her. He was a tall man with thoughtful eyes and the exhausted patience of someone who had spent decades protecting institutions from the people running them. He had known Elias Sterling better than most and feared him less than many. You don't have to do this undercover, Alastair said. The board will support a formal transition. The board will support whoever protects their shares, Maya replied. A few attorneys looked down at their papers. Alastair's mouth twitched. Your grandfather would have enjoyed that answer. My grandfather enjoyed storms because he owned good windows. And you? Maya looked at the skyline. Somewhere inside the tower across town, employees were smiling at people they hated and obeying people they feared. I want to know what happens to people who don't have windows, she said. So the board prepared the reveal for the annual promotion celebration, where department honors, executive appointments, and investor announcements would already draw attention. Until then, only a sealed circle knew the truth. Alastair, Beatrice, the trustees, the chief legal officer, and the head of internal audit. Maya returned to her desk the next day with a lunch container, a jammed printer, and $70 billion in silence pressing against her tongue. The heavier the secret became, the more carelessly people behaved around it. Serena began targeting her with elegance. Not openly at first. Open cruelty created witnesses. Serena preferred accidents. Files Maya needed vanished from shared drives. Meetings changed rooms without notifying her. Assignments arrived minutes before deadlines. Once, Maya found her name removed from an email chain after she had done most of the preparatory research. When Maya mentioned it to Grace, Grace closed her eyes. You upset her, Grace said. By noticing a risk. By letting other people notice you noticing. That was the real crime inside Sterling Dominion, not incompetence, not arrogance, not even cruelty. The crime was disrupting the performance of superiority. Maya endured it, but she did not ignore it. She forwarded emails to a private archive. She saved timestamps. She kept names. She spoke kindly to assistants, analysts, drivers, cleaning staff, receptionists, and cafeteria workers because they saw more than executives believed and remembered more than cameras recorded. A night cleaner named Mrs. Alvarez told Maya that Serena often stayed late on Thursdays but did not always leave alone. A junior accountant named Priya whispered that certain discretionary expenses under Serena's division looked strange. A security guard named Tom admitted that Victor had been signed into the executive guest system 7 times in 1 month. He's your boyfriend, isn't he? Tom asked, embarrassed after saying it. Maya's fingers tightened around the visitor log copy. Yes, she said, he is. Tom shifted, I'm sorry. People said I'm sorry when they knew the truth had reached you before you were ready to hold it. That evening, Maya sat in her apartment with the visitor logs spread across her small kitchen table. Rain scratched at the windows. The radiator clicked. Her phone lay face down beside a cooling cup of tea. Victor had told her he was meeting clients on those nights. Maybe Serena was a client. Maybe the logs meant nothing. Maybe the hand on his sleeve had been exactly as innocent as he said. Maya picked up her phone and saw a message from him. "Can't come tonight. Investor dinner ran late, miss you." She looked at the dates on the logs. Then she turned the phone face down again. When she was 9 years old, Maya had once found a cracked vase in her grandfather's library. It was an ugly thing, green and gold, far too old to be attractive. She had been chasing a rubber ball down the hall despite being told not to play near the antiques. The vase wobbled, fell, and broke into 3 pieces. Her cousin Oliver, 12 and already skilled in survival, told her to blame the maid. "She won't be fired," he said. "Grandfather likes her." Maya had stood over the broken pieces, terrified. When Elias entered, he looked at the vase, then at Maya. "Who broke it?" "I did," she whispered. Oliver looked away. Elias studied her for so long she thought he might send her away forever. Instead, he knelt, picked up one piece of the vase and said, "This was worth less than the truth. Most things are." Years later, she learned the vase had been a replica. The lesson had not been. Now sitting at her kitchen table with Victor's lie glowing silently on her phone, Maya understood another part of it. Truth was valuable not only because it was moral, it was valuable because lies made people predictable. Once someone chose a lie, they had to keep choosing around it. They had to build hallways, doors, and hiding places. All Maya had to do was map the house. Victor proposed, moving in together 2 weeks before the party. He did it over dinner at a rooftop restaurant he could not afford unless someone else had paid for it. The city glittered beneath them. Candlelight softened his face. He reached across the table and touched her wrist. "I've been thinking," he said, "maybe we should stop circling each other." Maya looked at the untouched wine in his glass. Victor always drank when nervous. Tonight he had not. "What does that mean?" "It means I love you." The words entered the space between them like something rehearsed. Maya waited. Victor smiled. "Say something." "You love me." "I do." "Why now?" A flicker of annoyance, gone quickly, "Because almost losing you made me realize what matters." Almost losing her, as if he had misplaced her somewhere and found her again under a coat. "I see," Maya said. He reached into his coat pocket. For one breath, she thought it was a ring. Instead, he pulled out a key. "I found a place," he said, "temporary but beautiful, corporate lease. A friend helped, we could start fresh." Maya looked at the key on the table. A corporate lease. She already knew about it. Internal audit had flagged it that morning. A luxury serviced residence billed through a shell consulting arrangement connected to Serena's division. Victor's name did not appear on the lease. Serena's did, but access cards had been issued to both. Maya heard Alastair's voice from their last private meeting. "We can remove them quietly before the reveal. You don't need to continue exposing yourself to this." And Maya had answered, "Not yet." Now she picked up the key. "It's expensive," she said. Victor laughed softly. "Don't worry about that." "Shouldn't I?" "I told you, I'm doing well." "Consulting." "Yes." "For whom?" He leaned back. "Why does this feel like an interrogation?" "Because you keep answering like a witness." The charm cooled. "Maya." She set the key down. "I'm not moving in with you." His jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because I don't trust what you're offering." For a moment, the mask slipped enough for her to see contempt. Not hatred, not yet, something worse. A flash of impatience toward an object refusing to function. Then he softened again. "I know you've been hurt," he said, "but you can't keep punishing me for being ambitious." Maya smiled sadly. Ambition was never the problem. What was? Entitlement. He stared at her. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed too loudly at another table. A waiter passed, carrying a silver tray. The city continued shining, indifferent to small betrayals happening above it. Victor took the key back. You know, he said quietly, there are women who would appreciate what I'm trying to build. Maya folded her napkin, then build it with one of them. She left before dessert. The next morning, Serena wore a ruby necklace Maya had seen in a photograph from Victor's apartment listing. Not the same necklace, perhaps, but close enough to be a message. She stopped by Maya's desk and placed a folder on it. Investor packets, Serena said, reformat them by noon. Maya looked at the folder. These are already finalized. Then it should be easy. I have payroll reconciliation due. Serena tilted her head. You seem to misunderstand the nature of junior work. It is not designed around your preferences. Grace stood from her desk. I can help with. No, Serena said without looking at her. Maya can manage. She's very observant. The words were silk, wrapped around wire. Maya looked up. Of course. Serena leaned closer, lowering her voice enough that only Maya could hear. Men don't like women who make everything difficult. Maya met her eyes. Weak men don't. Serena's smile remained, but the warmth vanished from her face. That afternoon, Maya received an anonymous message from an internal account created that morning. You think you're better than people because you act humble. You're not. At the party, everyone will see exactly what you are. There was an attachment. Maya did not open it on her work computer. She forwarded it securely to Beatrice, then took a long breath and stared at the small blinking cursor on her screen. Everyone will see exactly what you are. For the first time since she had entered Sterling Dominion under a false name, Maya felt fear move through her, not fear of being exposed, but fear of what people might do when they believed exposure belonged only to someone else. That night, Beatrice called. Maya, she said, her voice clipped, do not use any personal items left unattended in the office. Maya stood in her bathroom, phone pressed to her ear. Why? A pause. The attachment contained a conversation. Maya looked at herself in the mirror. She was still wearing the grey sweater from work. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked tired, ordinary, almost fragile. It struck her suddenly how useful fragility was to people who needed permission to be cruel. They saw softness and imagined no consequences. What conversation? Maya asked. Beatrice exhaled, between Victor Hale and Serena Vale. The room seemed to narrow. Send it to me. I don't recommend. Send it. A minute later, the file arrived. Maya listened once. Then again. Not because she needed to hear it twice. Because after the first time, her mind refused to accept that people could laugh like that while planning someone else's humiliation. Victor's voice was unmistakable, warm, amused, intimate in a way that made Maya's stomach turn. Serena's voice was lower, pleased with itself. They spoke about the promotion party. They spoke about Maya's little moment and how funny it would be when she became the center of attention for the wrong reason. They referred to something placed among her belongings. They did not describe it in detail, but they did not need to. Beatrice's warning had already told Maya enough. Then Serena said, after tomorrow, she won't show her face here again. Victor laughed. She'll run, he said. She always acts strong, but she's not built for rooms like that. Maya stopped the recording. The silence after his voice was enormous. She set the phone on the sink and gripped the counter. In the mirror, her face did not crumple. That surprised her. She had expected tears. She had expected some visible sign that betrayal had entered her body and changed it, but her reflection looked calm. Too calm. As a child, she had once watched a storm approach the coast from her grandfather's house. The sky had turned greenish, the sea flat and strange. She remembered asking why everything had become so quiet. Her mother had pulled her away from the window and said, because the storm is gathering itself. Now Maya understood. She called Alistair first. We move tonight, he said after listening. No. Maya. If we move tonight, they lose quietly. They should lose quietly. It protects the company. It protects the company from embarrassment, Maya said, not from rot. Alastair said nothing. Maya continued, her voice steady. How many people has Serena done this to in smaller ways? How many careers did she damage because no one wanted a scene? How many victors walk through this company believing proximity to power makes them untouchable? If we handle it quietly, everyone learns the same lesson they have always learned. And what lesson is that? That powerful people are only punished in private. Alastair sighed. Your grandfather would have called this reckless. My grandfather left me a letter telling me to find the rot. Yes, Alastair said, but he also enjoyed theatrical punishment. Despite herself, Maya almost smiled. Then perhaps I inherited something after all. Her next call was to Beatrice. I need the legal team ready, Maya said. Not dramatic, precise. Already done. I need internal audit to freeze discretionary accounts linked to Serena's division at the moment of announcement. Prepared. I need security to secure my desk, my apartment access, and the executive residence. Done. Maya paused. You expected this. I worked for Elias Sterling for 27 years, Beatrice said dryly. I expect everything. After the call, Maya opened the bottom drawer of her bathroom vanity and removed the small velvet box her mother had left her. Inside was a pair of pearl earrings and a handwritten note. Wear these when you need to remember who you are before the world tells you. Maya had not worn them since the funeral. She touched one pearl with her thumb. Her mother, Caroline, had hated the Sterling world. She had married into it young and left it with scars she rarely named. She used to tell Maya that rich people were not all cruel, but wealth made cruelty easier to hide. Never envy people with locked gates, she once said, while planting roses in their small backyard after leaving the estate. Sometimes gates keep people in. Maya had spent years believing her mother left the family because she feared money. Only after Caroline died did Maya find letters showing the truth. Her mother had left because she feared what money did to love when love became dependent on permission. Elias had offered Caroline houses, accounts, protection, influence. Caroline refused all of it except school tuition for Maya. She wanted her daughter to know the Sterling name but not be swallowed by it. Maya wondered what her mother would think of the woman she had become, hiding in plain sight, collecting evidence, preparing to stand in front of hundreds and reveal that the poor girl was not poor at all. Maybe Caroline would be disappointed. Maybe she would be proud. Maybe both. The morning of the promotion party arrived bright and cold. Maya went to work as usual. That was the part that unsettled people later when they told the story, not the reveal, not even the downfall. It was the fact that she sat at her desk for 8 hours with betrayal folded neatly inside her, answering emails, correcting schedules, helping Grace fix the printer, and asking Lena whether her presentation slides were ready. You look different, Lena said around noon. Maya touched her hair unconsciously. Do I? Not like appearance, like, Lena searched for the word, like you heard something you can't unhear. Maya looked at her. Lena lowered her voice. Did Serena do something? Yes. Can I help? The question moved Maya more than she expected. In a building full of people waiting to see where power would land, Lena offered help to someone she believed had none. Maya smiled. You already have. Lena frowned. That sounds like goodbye. No, Maya said. It's more like before. Before what? Maya looked toward the executive elevators, where Serena was stepping out in a fitted white suit, laughing with a vice president who had no idea his office would be searched within 12 hours. Before people learn where they're standing, Maya said. At 4 o'clock, Serena stopped by Maya's desk one last time. She looked radiant, triumphant already. There was a glow to her cruelty now, a visible anticipation. She held a garment bag over one arm. Big night, Serena said. For the company, Maya replied. For some of us more than others. Maya continued typing. Serena's eyes moved to Maya's tote bag under the desk. You should make an effort tonight. It would be embarrassing to look out of place. Maya looked up. Embarrassing for whom? Serena smiled. That depends how the evening goes. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to study the woman fully. Not the silk, not the polished hair, not the diamond studs. The hunger beneath it all. Serena did not merely want success. She wanted witnesses. She wanted people who had doubted her to watch her become untouchable. Maya understood that hunger better than Serena would have liked. It lived in many people who climbed from fear, who mistook admiration for safety and cruelty for proof that they had arrived. Perhaps Serena had not been born heartless. Perhaps she had learned early that rooms opened faster when she made herself dazzling and dangerous. But pain explained cruelty. It did not excuse it. Enjoy the party, Maya said. Serena leaned closer. Oh, I will. When she walked away, Maya opened her drawer and removed her notebook. She turned to the first page. Charity hire. Then the next. Lena crying. Then the next. Victor guest logs. Then the next. Anonymous message. Page after page, pattern after pattern, a map of the house Lies had built. She closed the notebook and placed it in her bag. At 6:30, the Sterling Dominion ballroom glittered beneath 5 crystal chandeliers. The company had rented the Grand Aurelia Hotel's largest event space, a hall of mirrored walls, gold balconies, and tall windows overlooking the river. Servers moved between clusters of executives with trays of champagne. A string quartet played near the stage. Photographers captured smiling pairs who would later study the images carefully to see who stood closest to power. Maya arrived through the side entrance in a simple black dress. It was not expensive enough to impress the people who measured fabric by brand, but it fit her perfectly. Her hair was swept into a low knot. Her mother's pearls rested at her ears. She wore no necklace, no bracelet, no visible sign of wealth except the calm in her posture. Grace saw her first. Maya, she whispered, hurrying over, you came. Of course. I thought after everything with Serena. Grace stopped. She did not know what everything meant, not yet, but she had seen enough office cruelty to worry. I'm fine, Maya said. Grace gave her a look. No one who says that at a corporate event is fine. Maya laughed softly. Across the ballroom, Victor entered in a black tuxedo with Serena on his arm. For one impossible second, Maya's heart reacted before her mind could stop it. There he was, the man who had once brought soup when she was sick, the man who had kissed her forehead at bus stops, the man who knew she hated sleeping with closet doors open because as a child she imagined secrets hiding inside them. Memory did not disappear just because truth arrived. It lingered cruelly, offering old warmth from a burned house. Then Victor saw her. His smile changed. Not guilt, not apology. Anticipation. Serena whispered something to him, and both of them looked at Maya's hair. Maya felt the last fragile thread inside her snap cleanly. She had once wondered whether she would forgive him if he confessed, whether some part of her would search for the man he had been before ambition sharpened him into something unrecognizable, but his eyes gave her the answer. He did not regret the wound. He was waiting for it to open. Alastair Rowe stood near the stage speaking with investors. He glanced toward Maya, and she gave the smallest nod. He understood. The program began at 7. Awards were given, promotions announced. Applause rose and fell like rehearsed weather. Serena received a Departmental Excellence mention and walked to the stage with graceful surprise, as if she had not known in advance. She kissed Alastair's cheek. He allowed it with the stiff patience of a man standing beside a decorative snake. Victor clapped loudly from the front table. Maya stood near the back with Grace and Lena. You should be up there, Lena muttered after Serena's speech about integrity and team culture. Maya looked at Serena smiling beneath the lights. Not for that. What does that mean? You'll see. As the night continued, Maya noticed the trap beginning to tighten, not around her, but around those who had set it. Security shifted quietly near the exits. Beatrice appeared near the side wall, dressed in black, holding a tablet. 2 members of internal audit took positions near the finance team. The company's chief legal officer stepped out of the room, then returned with a face like sealed stone. No one else noticed. People rarely noticed consequences before they had names attached. At 7:40, Serena excused herself from Victor and moved toward the ladies' lounge. Maya watched her go. Beatrice's warning echoed in her mind. Do not use any personal items left unattended in the office. Maya had not. That morning, with security present, she had checked her desk, her tote, her drawer, the products in the small cosmetic pouch she kept for long days at work. One item had been tampered with. The lab report would not be ready until morning, but the intent was already clear from the recording. It was petty. That was what made it chilling. Not grand theft, not blackmail, not a corporate coup. A small, intimate violation designed to make a woman feel unsafe in her own body. Ridiculous in public and powerless in the aftermath. It was the kind of cruelty that counted on shame doing most of the work. Maya had held the sealed evidence bag and thought of every woman in every workplace who had swallowed humiliation because reporting it would make them seem dramatic. She thought of Lena crying in the restroom, Grace lowering her voice, Mrs. Alvarez noticing everything and being asked nothing, Priya whispering about accounts no one wanted to audit. Then Maya thought of her grandfather's letter. When someone shows you what they would do to the powerless, believe them. At 8 o'clock, Alastair stepped onto the stage for the final announcement. The ballroom settled into expectant silence. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, thank you for joining us tonight as we recognize the people who have contributed to Sterling Dominion Group's continued success. Applause. Maya stood very still. Victor looked bored, one arm draped over the back of Serena's chair. Serena looked satisfied, checking the room as if counting allies. Alastair continued, tonight, however, is not only about promotions, it is also about transition. As many of you know, our founder, Elias Sterling, passed away earlier this year. His vision built this company, his standards shaped it, and his final decision will guide its future. The air shifted. Executives leaned toward one another. Investors looked up from their phones. Serena's smile faltered slightly. Victor sat straighter. Maya heard her own heartbeat, slow and heavy. For months, Alastair said, the board and trustees have worked through the transition of controlling ownership. That process is now complete. A murmur moved through the room. Alastair looked toward Maya. And it is my honor to introduce the new controlling owner of Sterling Dominion Group, Ms. Maya Sterling. For 1 second, no one moved. Then the silence became something alive. Heads turned, whispers broke open. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Lena whispered, what? Victor stared at Maya with an expression she had never seen on him before. Not love, not shock alone, calculation collapsing into terror. Serena stood halfway from her chair, then froze. Maya walked toward the stage. Every step felt both endless and strangely familiar, as if she had been walking toward that microphone since childhood, past the cracked vase, past her mother's roses, past Victor's first kiss, past every small moment when someone mistook her restraint for weakness. The room parted for her. The same people who had ignored her in elevators now stared, as if seeing her created a problem they had no language for. At the stage stairs, Alastair offered his hand. Maya took it. The applause began uncertainly, then grew as people realized applause was the safest reaction. It rolled through the ballroom, loud and false and frightened. Maya stood at the microphone and waited until it died. She looked out over the room. "Thank you, Chairman Rowe," she said. Her voice was calm, that mattered. Rage would have given them somewhere to hide. Calm forced them to listen. "Many of you know me by another name. For the past 3 months, I have worked inside Sterling Dominion as Maya Bell, a junior administrative associate. I answered emails, prepared documents, sat in meetings, and listened. No one coughed, no glasses clinked, even the string quartet had gone still. I did this because my grandfather left me a question, not simply a company. He asked whether Sterling Dominion was still worthy of the future he built for it. I could not answer that from a private office." Maya's eyes moved briefly to Grace, then Lena, then Priya near the finance table. "So I entered the company where consequences are felt most directly, not at the top. At the desks, in the copy rooms, in the overtime logs, in the whispered warnings new employees receive before they learn who must not be offended." Serena's face was pale now. Victor leaned toward her, whispering rapidly. She did not look at him. Maya continued, "I found brilliance here. I found loyalty. I found people carrying departments on salaries that do not reflect their value. I found employees protecting one another in quiet ways. I found assistants who know more than executives, analysts whose work has been stolen, and managers who have mistaken fear for respect." A ripple moved through the room. "And I found rot." There it was. The word struck harder than accusation because it sounded like diagnosis. Maya looked toward Serena. "Tonight, before stepping onto this stage, I had 2 choices. I could protect the appearance of this company by handling certain matters quietly, or I could protect the future of this company by making clear that silence will no longer be the price of survival here." Serena sat down slowly. Victor's eyes darted toward the exits. Maya lifted a small remote from the podium. The screen behind her changed. Not to scandalous images, not to anything cruel or humiliating. Maya would not become what they were. The screen showed a timeline, dates, visitor logs, expense approvals, unauthorized residence access, internal messages, altered assignments, and documented retaliation. Names were redacted where appropriate. Enough remained visible. The room inhaled. "Earlier this week," Maya said, "company security and legal counsel received evidence of misconduct involving a senior strategy director and an external consultant with unauthorized access to company resources." Serena stood. "This is absurd." Maya did not raise her voice. "Ms. Vale, please sit down." The use of her name landed like a gavel. Serena remained standing for half a second too long, then sat. Maya looked toward Victor. "The consultant in question is Victor Hale." Victor's face burned red. "Maya, we need to talk." "No," Maya said. "We needed to talk months ago. Tonight, the company needs to listen." A few people turned away from him as if misconduct were contagious. Maya pressed the remote again. The screen displayed expense records tied to Shell consulting invoices, unauthorized charges, residence access logs, payments routed through discretionary budgets. Then came a transcript excerpt from the conversation Beatrice had reviewed, short, sufficient, devastating. Maya did not play their laughter. She did not need to. The words were enough. Serena's hand trembled around her champagne glass. Victor looked as if he might be sick. Maya turned back to the room. "The evidence has been secured. Legal action will proceed where appropriate. Effective immediately, Serena Vale's employment is terminated for cause, pending further investigation into misuse of company funds, retaliation against subordinates, and conspiracy to create a hostile and unsafe workplace." Serena shot to her feet. "You can't do this." "I already have. I built the expansion strategy. You inflated projections, buried risk, and took credit for work done by people who were afraid to contradict you." The room turned toward the finance director from that first meeting. He looked at the table. Maya's voice remained steady. "Effective immediately, Victor Hale's consulting agreements, access privileges, residence benefits, and all pending payments connected to sterling dominion are revoked. Any company assets in his possession are to be returned tonight. Victor stepped into the aisle. Maya, come on, this is personal. For the first time, something like sadness crossed her face. You made it personal when you mistook intimacy for access. He flinched. You made it corporate when you used company resources. The legal team moved quietly near the front. You made it unforgivable, Maya said, when you chose humiliation as entertainment. No one spoke. There were moments in every room when people decided what version of themselves they would be afterward. Maya could feel it happening around her. Some people were frightened because power had shifted. Others were relieved because power had finally looked in their direction. A few were angry, not because Serena and Victor had done wrong, but because wrong had become inconveniently visible. Maya stepped away from the podium. I want to be clear, she said. This company will not be governed by revenge. It will be governed by accountability. There will be an independent audit of executive expenses, promotion practices, retaliation complaints, and departmental culture. Employees who have been silenced will have protected channels to speak. Managers who have abused authority will lose it. She looked at Lena. Work that was stolen will be credited. She looked at Grace. Labor that was ignored will be compensated. She looked across the ballroom at people who suddenly understood that the poor woman had been taking notes. And anyone who believes dignity is reserved for those with titles should resign before I find them. The applause that followed was different. It began at the back. Not from executives, from assistants, coordinators, analysts, people who had spent years clapping for announcements that did not include them. Grace clapped first. Then Lena. Then Priya. Then the sound spread until it filled the ballroom, not polished this time, not safe, but fierce. Some executives joined because they had to, others because, for the first time in years, they wanted to. Serena stood motionless, her face stripped of its shine. Victor tried to push toward the stage, but security intercepted him. Maya, he said, louder now, desperate enough to forget the room. You know me. She looked at him. That was the cruelest part. She did know him. She knew the way he liked coffee with cinnamon. She knew he tapped his fingers when lying. She knew he hated being laughed at because his father had laughed at every dream he ever shared. She knew ambition had begun in him as hunger and hardened into entitlement after years of comparing himself to people born higher. She knew enough to pity him, not enough to spare him. I knew who you pretended to be, she said. He stared at her as if she had slapped him. Serena grabbed her clutch and moved toward the side exit, but Beatrice stepped into her path. Ms. Vale, Beatrice said, you will need to surrender company devices before leaving. Serena laughed once, sharp and ugly. Do you know who my attorney is? Beatrice smiled pleasantly. Do you know who I am? Serena did not answer. That too became part of the story. The collapse did not finish in the ballroom. Collapses rarely do. Public humiliation is only the sound the building makes when the foundation finally gives way. By midnight, Serena's office was sealed. Her laptop, phone, and executive access cards were collected. Internal audit discovered that the corporate residence Victor had offered Maya was not the only benefit hidden under Serena's division. There were travel upgrades, luxury expenses disguised as client development, unauthorized vendor payments connected to Victor's consulting shell, and a pattern of retaliation against employees who questioned her. By 2 a.m, Victor was removed from the serviced residence he had never legally occupied. His belongings were packed under supervision and delivered to the hotel lobby where he had no reservation and no credit card that still worked. The corporate accounts he had relied on were frozen pending review. Personal creditors, already circling because he had borrowed against future payments that would no longer arrive, began calling before sunrise. By 9, Serena's bank notified her of holds related to the investigation. By 10, her landlord informed her that the luxury apartment subsidized through executive housing was terminated under the morality and fraud clauses she had never read because she believed contracts were for people with less leverage. By noon, their photographs were gone from the company intranet. But Maya did not see most of this happen. After the party, after the legal statements, after the board's emergency session, she returned alone to her apartment. Not the penthouse Elias had left empty for her. Not the corporate residence. Her apartment with the noisy pipes and old ghosts. She removed her mother's pearls, placed them back in the velvet box, and sat on the edge of her bed as dawn softened the windows. Only then did she cry. Not for Serena. Not even for Victor, not exactly. She cried for the woman she had been before she learned that someone could hold her at night and laugh about breaking her in the morning. She cried for every memory now stained with doubt. She cried because victory did not return innocence. It only proved she had survived without it. Her phone buzzed at 6:12 a.m. A message from Victor. Please, I have nowhere to go. Maya stared at the words. Once she would have rushed to rescue him from the consequences of his own choices. Once she would have confused mercy with self-betrayal. Once she would have opened the door and called it kindness while he stepped over the threshold carrying another lie. She typed one sentence. Contact your attorney. Then she blocked the number. For a long time, she sat in the quiet. At 8, she dressed for work. The lobby of Sterling Dominion was different that morning. Not physically, the same marble floors gleamed beneath the same chandeliers. The same screens displayed market updates. The same portrait of Elias Sterling watched over the entrance with its stern painted eyes. But people moved differently when Maya entered. Some froze. Some lowered their heads. Some tried to smile as though they had always known she was important. Maya disliked those smiles most. The security guard who had checked her badge on her first day straightened. Good morning, Miss Sterling. Good morning, Tom. He blinked, surprised she knew his name. Maya continued to the elevator. Inside, 3 executives stood in stiff silence. One of them, a man who had once complained loudly that junior staff multiply like office plants, pressed the button for the top floor. Maya pressed 27. He looked confused. Miss Sterling, the executive officers are. I know where they are. She got off on 27. The administrative floor went silent when she stepped out. Grace rose slowly from her desk. Lena stood near the printer, holding papers she had forgotten to collect. Priya appeared from the finance corridor. Faces peered over cubicle walls. Maya looked at them and felt the weight of what came next. Revealing power was easy compared to using it well. Good morning, she said. No one answered at first. Then Grace, practical even in shock, said, the printer's jammed again. For one beat, the whole floor held its breath. Maya laughed. The tension broke. People laughed too, quietly, cautiously, then with relief. Then we should start there, Maya said. It became the first story employees told about her after the reveal. That on her first morning as owner, Maya Sterling helped remove a crumpled page from the office printer. It was not entirely true. Grace did most of the work. But Maya let the story live. Companies needed legends, and she preferred that one to fear. Over the next month, Sterling Dominion changed in ways that made some people hopeful and others furious. The audit began with executive expenses and spread into promotions, vendor contracts, bonus structures, and complaint histories. People who had built careers on intimidation suddenly discovered calendars full of meetings with legal counsel. 2 vice presidents resigned before they could be questioned. A procurement director was escorted out after evidence showed he had steered contracts toward a family associate. 3 managers were demoted for retaliation. 1 was terminated after Lena finally submitted documentation. Serena had once pressured her to bury. Grace was promoted to Director of Administrative Operations with a salary correction that made her sit quietly in Maya's office for nearly a minute before saying, "This is too much." "No," Maya said, "it was too little before." Priya joined the internal controls team. Lena's stolen campaign concept was credited publicly, and she was offered a leadership role in brand strategy. At first, she refused. "I don't want people thinking I only got it because I was nice to you," Lena said. Maya leaned back in her chair. "You got it because your work was excellent. You were nice to me because your character is excellent. Try not to confuse the two." Lena smiled. "That sounds like something from a leadership book. My grandfather would be horrified." Maya moved into the executive office on the 48th floor, only after replacing the furniture. Elia's old desk was too large, too dark, too full of ghosts. She sent it to the company archive and chose a simpler one made of pale wood. Behind it, she hung no portrait of herself. Instead, she framed a copy of the first anonymous employee survey results, including the harsh comments. "Trust will take time. Executives protect executives. Don't make promises you won't keep." She read them every morning. Alastair found her doing this one day and shook his head. Most owners frame magazine covers. Most owners are surrounded by people afraid to insult them honestly. "Fair point." He set a folder on her desk, "The Vale Hale Matter." Maya's expression did not change, but Alastair knew her well enough now to see the stillness sharpen. "What about it?" "Serena is contesting termination. Victor is claiming reputational damages." "Of course he is. The evidence is strong." "I know." "There's more." Alastair opened the folder. Serena attempted to move funds through an account connected to an offshore vendor. Legal froze the transaction. Victor appears to have guaranteed several personal loans using pending consulting revenue as collateral. Revenue he was not guaranteed. "Yes, his creditors have filed. He may declare bankruptcy." Maya looked toward the window. Far below, the city moved in bright lines of traffic and ambition. And Serena, without company housing, frozen accounts, and pending civil claims, her situation is deteriorating quickly. Maya closed her eyes for a second. Alastair studied her. "You're allowed not to feel sorry for them." "I know. But you do." "I feel sorry for what they became," Maya said, "not for what it cost them." Alastair nodded slowly. "That distinction will save you from becoming your grandfather." Maya looked at him. Did he make that distinction? Rarely. After Alastair left, Maya opened the folder. There were photographs from the serviced residence inventory, Victor's suits in garment bags, Serena's designer shoes lined in boxes, a life arranged to appear permanent, built on access that could be revoked with a signature. She thought of the key Victor had placed on the restaurant table. "Don't worry about that." He had thought the debt belonged to someone else. In the end, people often mistook borrowed power for owned power. 2 weeks later, Maya saw Victor again. She had not planned to. He appeared outside Sterling Dominion on a grey afternoon, thinner than before, wearing the same navy coat from the night with the roses. Without the expensive watch he used to flash while pretending not to. Security called up before allowing him near the private reception area. "He says he only needs 5 minutes, Tom said through the phone. Maya almost said no. Then she remembered her mother's words, "Locked gates sometimes keep people in." "Send him to the visitor room," she said. Victor was already standing when she entered. The room was small, glass-walled, deliberately neutral, no executive furniture, no symbolic advantage except the one neither of them could ignore. "Maya," he said. "Victor." He swallowed. "You look well." She did not answer. He looked around, perhaps hopping for softness in the room. Finding none, he forced a small laugh. I guess I should have known. That I looked well. That you were more than you said. Maya sat across from him. I never told you I was poor. You let me think it. I let you show me who you were when you thought it. His face tightened. That's cruel. No, what you did was cruel. What I did was informative. He looked down at his hands. I made mistakes. Yes. I got caught up in things. Maya waited. He hated silence. It made him fill rooms with himself. Serena made everything feel possible, he said finally. She knew people. She opened doors. She made me feel like I wasn't always chasing from behind. And I made you feel what? He looked at her then, and for the first time there was something honest in his face. Ugly, but honest. Small, he said. Maya absorbed that. She had expected excuses. She had not expected truth. Because I didn't admire the things you wanted admired. Because you didn't need them, he said, bitterness rising. You lived in that apartment, wore those clothes, acted like none of it mattered. Do you know what that's like for someone who has spent his whole life trying to matter? Yes, Maya said quietly. It feels like standing next to a mirror that refuses to flatter you. Victor's eyes reddened. I loved you. No, Maya said, not angrily, almost gently. You loved being loved by me. There's a difference. He looked away. For a moment, she saw the boy beneath him, the one mocked by a father who measured worth in money, the one who learned early that admiration felt safer than affection. She saw how easily pain could become hunger, and hunger could become harm. But seeing the wound did not require handing him a knife again. I need help, Victor said. My accounts are locked. I lost the apartment. Serena won't answer me. My creditors are, he stopped himself, perhaps remembering legal ears might be near. I just need enough to stabilize, alone. There it was. Not apology. Request. Maya stood. His face changed. Please. Victor, you should contact your attorney and a financial counselor. If you need information about shelters or public services, reception can provide a list. Humiliation flashed across his face. Shelters. You said you had nowhere to go. I came to you. I know. And you're going to send me away like some stranger. Maya looked at him for a long moment. A flashback rose uninvited. Victor in her old kitchen, flour on his shirt, laughing as they ruined homemade bread. Victor asleep on her couch during a snowstorm. Victor holding the white roses in the rain. Then another memory replaced it, his voice on the recording. She'll run. She would have helped you, Maya said. He frowned. Who? The woman you thought I was. The words landed between them. And you, he asked. I'm the woman who survived what you did to her. Victor's mouth opened, then closed. Maya walked to the door. Behind her he said, Do you ever miss me? She stopped. The truthful answer was inconvenient. Yes, she said without turning, but missing someone is not the same as wanting them back. She left him in the visitor room with that. Serena never asked to see Maya. She sent threats instead. Through attorneys, through anonymous press tips, through former allies who tried to suggest that a public settlement would be cleaner. Serena claimed she was being scapegoated by a jealous owner. She claimed Victor had manipulated her. She claimed the recording was misunderstood, the expenses misclassified, the retaliation exaggerated, the workplace complaints orchestrated by ambitious subordinates. But people had been waiting years to speak. Once the first protected statements were taken, more followed. Assistants, analysts, contractors, former employees who had left with damaged confidence and signed non-disclosure agreements that Beatrice now reviewed with predatory interest. Serena had not ruined everyone. Only enough people to create a pattern. And patterns were harder to charm than individuals. The final blow came from an old email Serena had forgotten. Years earlier, before Maya entered the company, Serena had written to a colleague, "Fear is cheaper than loyalty and more reliable." The colleague had saved it. Maya read the email once and felt no triumph. Only confirmation. 6 months after the party, Sterling Dominion held its first open employee forum in the renovated auditorium. No chandeliers, no champagne, no speeches about family culture written by consultants who had never eaten lunch in the employee cafeteria. Just a stage, microphones, and a room full of people waiting to see whether the new owner's promises had survived contact with power. Maya stood at the front, wearing a navy suit and her mother's pearls. She had almost not worn them. They made her feel exposed, as if Caroline were watching, but perhaps that was why she needed them. Grace sat in the front row with a tablet. Lena stood near the aisle, speaking with 2 members of her new team. Priya was already arguing gently with a finance manager over revised controls. Tom had been promoted to security supervisor. Mrs. Alvarez now led a vendor review committee that had already improved cleaning staff contracts across 3 buildings. The company was not healed. No company ever was. But it was awake. A young employee stepped to the microphone during questions. He looked nervous, barely older than 22. "My question is for Ms. Sterling," he said. "How do we know this change is permanent? I mean, sorry, but people at the top always say things will be different." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Maya smiled. "Don't apologize, that's the right question." He relaxed slightly. "You won't know from my words," Maya said. "You'll know from what happens when the changes become inconvenient. You'll know when someone profitable violates policy and still faces consequences. You'll know when the company chooses fairness over appearance without needing applause for it." She paused. "And if that stops happening, you should make noise." A murmur moved through the room. Respectfully, the employee asked. Maya thought of Serena's glass conference room, Victor's borrowed key, her grandfather's letter, her mother's gates. "No," Maya said, clearly. The room laughed, then applauded. Later, after the forum ended and the auditorium emptied, Maya remained near the stage alone. Alistair approached with 2 cups of coffee. "You did well," he said, handing her one. "Did I?" "You told them to make noise at a billionaire. Technically, at the company. Same problem." Maya took the coffee. "My grandfather would have hated it." "Your grandfather would have pretended to hate it, then quoted you at dinner." She smiled faintly. Alistair looked toward the rows of empty seats. "The press wants another interview." "No. Investors want reassurance. They can read the numbers. The numbers improved. Then they can read them happily." He chuckled. "You know, there are easier ways to own a company." "I'm sure. Private office, careful statements, occasional charity gala, terrible portrait. Tempting. But..." Maya looked out at the room where employees had asked questions without lowering their eyes. "But I spent 3 months being treated like I didn't matter," she said. "It was the most useful education I've ever received." Alistair nodded. "And Victor?" The name no longer struck like a blade, more like a bruise pressed by accident. "What about him?" "He declared bankruptcy last week." Maya looked into her coffee. "I know." "Serena." "Settlement conference failed. She may lose everything." Maya's voice was quiet. "No, she may lose everything she took." Alistair studied her with something like approval. "Careful, Miss Sterling," he said. "That sounded like justice." Maya looked toward the portrait of her grandfather that no longer hung in the lobby. She had moved it to the boardroom, where powerful people could sit beneath his gaze instead of making everyone else walk under it. "Justice," she said, "is just accountability with a longer memory." That evening, Maya returned once more to the old apartment. She had finally decided to move, not into a penthouse, but into a quiet house with a garden. The apartment was mostly empty now, boxes stacked against the wall, the radiator silent for once. On the kitchen counter lay the last thing she needed to pack, the velvet box with her mother's pearls. She opened it and found the note again. Wear these when you need to remember who you are before the world tells you. Maya read it twice. Then she turned it over. There, in handwriting she had somehow never noticed before, faint but unmistakable, was another line. And when the world finally tells you, decide whether to believe it. Maya sat down slowly. All her life, people had told her who she was. The sterling girl. The runaway. The humble one. The poor employee. The betrayed woman. The ruthless heiress. The savior. The threat. Each version had belonged partly to truth and partly to someone else's need. Victor needed her small. Serena needed her disposable. Employees needed her brave. Investors needed her stable. Her grandfather needed her honest. Her mother needed her free. But Maya was beginning to understand that identity was not the mask others recognized or the power they feared once the mask came off. It was the choice made afterward. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lena. You coming tomorrow? The new interns want to meet the woman who scared half the executive floor into behaving. Maya smiled. She replied, tell them I'm less scary before coffee. A second later, Lena responded, that's not what Grace says. Maya laughed softly in the empty kitchen. Outside, the city moved on, full of windows and locked gates, borrowed keys and hidden rooms, people pretending, people watching, people waiting for power to reveal where it truly lived. Maya closed the velvet box. The next morning, she would enter Sterling Dominion through the front doors, not as Maya Bell, not as a rumor, not as a poor woman underestimated by the people who should have known better. She would enter as Maya Sterling. But she would still stop at the security desk. She would still greet Tom by name. She would still take elevator C sometimes, just to remember the first morning rainwater nearly splashed her shoes and Serena Vale mistook her silence for permission. Because power had changed the way people behaved around Maya. That much was true. But it had not changed the thing that mattered most. It had only revealed who everyone had been when they thought she had none.